Hello, Gaston County. Welcome to episode number 96 of Gaston's Great, a podcast highlighting some of the great things happening in and around Gaston County. I'm your host, Stephen Long, and we are coming to you once again from the international headquarters of GSM Services right here in downtown Gastonia. We simply believe in discussing more of the reasons why Gaston's great. We have another great organization this week as we highlight Victory Farm. We have Dory Pell and Julia Walsh with us today. Julia is a writer in the program, and Dory is the program director and founder of Victory Farm. Dory and Julia, it's great to have you on, and welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Absolutely. So we're going to get right to it, and I'll kind of throw out some questions for both of you, or I'll just say this is for you, Dory, or this is for you, Julia. But maybe start with you, Dory. Just tell us a little bit about yourself, anything that you would like to share.
Well, I come from a horse family. I'm third generation. My grandfather actually did rescue, but he called himself a trader because nobody knew what rescue was.
Gotcha.
But he would buy a whole pasture of, say, neglected or starving horses, and we would nurse them back to health. And my favorite thing was the morning that he walked in the kitchen and said, "Okay, let's see what we've got." And that meant he was throwing me on a horse to see if it was broke to ride.
Okay, so you were the guinea pig.
I was the guinea pig. I've ridden my whole life. Yeah, there's pictures of me at 5 months in front of my mother riding. So I was riding before I could walk, literally. My mother was an amazing instructor. She wrote for 2 horse magazines.
Oh, wow.
And she's also spearheaded the founding of the American Saddlebred Association of the Carolinas. So I come from a strong background. I was always a performance horse rider,
okay.
And I was groomed since I could walk to be a world champion, and I worked toward that, with every ounce of my strength and time. I worked toward that, achieved the nationals by the time I was 12 in championship and medal classes as well as age division, and went to the world championship 5 times, achieving a 3rd place. So was very proud of that. That was my goal in life, was to be a trainer and a world champion. And literally, I was helping a friend of ours who had had an accident, and I was working horses for him. And I was sitting at a grocery store buying carrots and apples for the horses. And this family went by me in the store, and it was a little girl pushing her brother in a wheelchair. And it was the mother and dad walking behind, just chatting. And I clearly heard it, and I know now this was God. I clearly heard, you can help that child. Now, this was the 80s. We didn't have internet. Nobody knew what therapeutic riding was. So, I'm like, I'm stroking out. What's going on? Where'd this voice come from? How do I help that kid? I don't like kids. I don't want kids. I don't teach kids. Totally out of the blue. And so then things just kept falling in my lap that brought me to therapeutic riding. I had an accident, and my therapist was a therapeutic riding instructor who had trained in Germany. And so she talked me into coming in to start working under her. So I volunteered in therapeutic riding and therapeutic riding programs, all through the late 80s and 90s. Around 2009, I was over at another program, a very large program, and the gentleman that ran that program said, "Why are you still here? You should do your own program, And I said, "I don't have any money." And so he talked me into starting Victory Farm, and it has truly been led by God, provided by God. I'm not here to preach. I'm just saying.
I understand, yeah.
He absolutely made it all possible, and he brought us to it, and he's bringing us through it.
So that's quite a story. I don't know how many times.
I didn't even know some of this. So
yeah, I'm sure.
I'm like super surprised right now.
Yeah, I'm sure that God has spoken to me more than once, and I didn't want to hear it.
Yeah, exactly. It took me over 20 years. Yeah.
Yeah, that's not what I was expecting. God said that makes me uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And
how do I do it?
Yeah.
How do I get there?
Yeah, isn't it? We're supposed to have the faith that He will provide the how, right?
Mm-hmm.
As long as we follow what He's telling us. Oof. I'm an engineer by training. That is not the path, right?
Right.
Wow, but that's a great story. I appreciate you sharing that. Julie, what about you? Anything you would like to share about yourself for our listeners?
I started, I'll go back. I had CP, and when I was growing up, I was born in 1998. So as I was growing up, there was nothing really around the South Carolina area really North Carolina area that specialized in CP. Even now, there's not a lot of doctors that specialize in it. So when my mom found Victory Farms, it was like, oh, yeah, it's something that specializes in therapeutic riding, and she loves animals, so this will work out really well.
Right.
And it did help. It helped a lot, especially with my CP as far as falling down, and it helped with spasticity. So this is one of very few organizations that actually does specialize in CP and other, because I know that there's some others, but they specialize in more cognitive. So this is really one of the only ones I know about that specializes in more physical disability. So it's really important that we have all of them around, especially in the South Carolina area where, honestly, there's not a lot of disability resources.
Okay. So how long have you been, well, I think I saw some pictures earlier from 2011 and 12. So is that how long you've been riding?
I've been riding since, I think I was 13. I know I've been riding since I was 13. When I was 14, I had surgery, so I had to take a very long break. And then I got back into riding, and I rode another horse, and then we switched. Junior came, and then I rode him. So I don't actually know how long it's been. It's just...
It's 2012 was the pictures I was pulling up were 2012.
Okay.
I was like, dang, she's been here a long time.
Yeah. Over 10 years.
Yeah.
Wow.
So 10, 11, 12 years maybe.
Well, good. Well, listen, I appreciate you sharing that. It's just good. Our listeners like to hear some background and kind of what your experience has been up to this point. So remember, the main point here, we want to learn as much as we can about Victory Farm and the work that you guys are doing. And so you kind of mentioned it already, but can you maybe get specific first? I mean, how long has Victory Farm been around?
We actually founded in 2009.
Okay. Is there a specific mission? I've been on the website. It's really good, so I appreciate that. But what is the mission, and what is it, the day in the life of Victory Farm? Just kind of give our listeners some idea of kind of what's going on. Does that make sense?
Certainly. Our main goal, I'm going to keep it a lot simpler than the big, long mission statement,
sure.
is to try and help children and adults learn to thrive despite any challenges they've got. So some good examples, for instance, is Julia falls less. She can become more mobile because the stretching and the movement of the horse provides her muscles and her body to align. I brought some photos of before and after, and her dad used to joke that he's got to let the crutches out by 2 inches because she's 2 inches taller after she rides.
Oh, wow.
So with each rider, we look at what their specific goals are. And we're a much smaller program than most because we actually focus more on each individual need. Like through the years, I came from some very large programs, and they would serve 70, 100, or 100 students a week, and they're wonderful. There's benefit in every single program, but I would see riders who were able to go on and be off-lead, who were able to be independent, who were able to trot, who were able to do some small jumps or something that would enable them to boost their confidence, to be stronger, to be more independent. Or you would have a child that didn't have the opportunity to groom and tack their horse because, our sessions will go from an hour to an hour and a half, depending on what goals we're trying to achieve. So we can't do 70 riders a week, But doing things like grooming your horse and tacking your horse, it provides fine motor skills, and it also provides self-care. Brushing your horse actually translates into washing your body, brushing your hair, brushing your teeth. They learn how to synchronize. For instance, if you want to tell your son to go brush his teeth, you don't need to say, for an able-bodied or neurotypical child, you don't need to say, first you go up the stairs, then you go in the bathroom.
Gotcha.
Then you pick up your toothbrush, then you wet your toothbrush, then you take the cap off. So for us, we teach them this is the brush you use first, this is the brush you use second. And we do some small games and stuff like that, but mainly it's repetitive motion. It's repetitive. So they can learn how to do skills at home, like put your socks on before you put your pants on, or, how to brush your own teeth.
Sure.
Buckling the buckles on the tack and the snaps helps them learn how to dress themselves. And we have a fabulous occupational therapist that helps us from time to time. So, for instance, we have a young lady that has, again, cerebral palsy, right side hemiplegia. She can't use her right arm. So her mother, into her entire life, had completely dressed her. This young lady did not know how to dress herself and had never been taught. Well, in dressing, I say dressing, I mean tacking the horse, she learns what to put on first, and that translates into her own room to put on her undershirt, to put on her underwear. Then she learned how to pick the pad up on the horse and adjust it with her shoulder, because she can't use her hand, put it in place. So then we worked on doing that same type movement to learn to put her own shirt on. So the things that we're teaching our riders is so much further than what most people understand is putting a smile on a child's face. Right. Yes, it puts a smile on their face, but we're talking about life-changing opportunities. We've had so many children with autism that are now able to sit through a class in school because they're learning discipline, respect, patience. They're learning how to express themselves. Y'all could talk about this forever. Do you want me to keep going?
Keep going. No, this is exactly. Yeah, I mean, you're answering like the next 3 or 4 questions all at one time, which is great.
Okay.
Which is great.
All right. So, for instance, with autism, if you think about your own self, if you're nervous, you tap your foot. I bite my lip. We do some type of movement. You take a baby, you rock it or you bounce it. Mm-hmm. So movement suppresses the central nervous system. So a lot of the problem with autism, for example, is that these children are not able to have their senses integrated so they can process and express, okay? Mm-hmm. So we end up with meltdowns. We end up with screaming, what people call bad behavior, but it's just the only way they know to express themselves. Right. So what happens when they're riding the horse, every muscle in the body is moving. The skeletal system, every muscle, the senses are integrating. We often take them to the woods where the wonderful pheromones from the trees are going into their body. They're feeling the sun on their face. Everything integrates in their system, in their senses. So all 5 senses become aware and integrated. We have children who speak their first words on the horse, who are able to take their first step because, like Julia, they've never known what it was to be able to sit up in a proper position or to move their legs properly.
And can I just add something about the senses thing? I haven't been diagnosed yet, but my doctors do say that there's a very strong chance I have Asperger's syndrome. So from my experience with on the horse, especially as she was saying on outside, you know, in the sun or just on the horse, it gives you something to focus on that really, because sometimes whenever I'm talking or whenever I'm in a new place, my senses get very easily overwhelmed. So it's really nice to be able to focus on something like the movement of my horse and be able to kind of just calm down and really focus. And I know a lot of people who probably are on the spectrum don't know what that's like, but it is a very calming feeling, especially, and it's also very affirming to be around people that know what you need. Because sometimes you can't always say what you need. You can't always say, I need to go to a quiet room. But, you know, at Dory Victor Farms, if I need something, I can just say it. And they're like, okay, this is what you need to do.
Well, for the rest of the podcast, Julie, feel free to interrupt Dory anytime.
Yeah, that was beautiful.
So don't, for 2 reasons, because that was very insightful, and secondly, she doesn't talk too much.
Okay.
Okay. So again, I appreciate that. That for someone who is a total novice and just not experienced with this, there was 2 great descriptions. Okay, you really, gave a clear, just a really clear description. I can almost see what you're doing, what you're dealing with, and so that's appreciative. So any other, because Julia did interrupt you when you were talking. Did any other initiatives or anything specific that you talk about, other programs, or is it really that niche, that you're doing with what you already described?
Well, we are branching out into some different areas. I actually have been a Special Olympics equestrian coach since 1992. I have 5 different certifications, which I love because each organization teaches you something different. And so you can bring not only from my own experience in horses, but from each organization more knowledge. But we're also getting ready to start a new Special Olympics program. Gaston County equestrian has not been real strong statewide.
Okay.
So we're very focused on getting more Special Olympics. We do need Special Olympics coaches, and we do need assistants and volunteers to do that. We are also starting a new initiative toward, I'm trying to think of the nice way to say this, the best way to say this. Take out nice. We're starting a mental health counseling area with some friends who do mental health counseling. It's something we've talked about for about the past 7 or 8 years. And now, thanks to a wonderful, gracious person, Ruth Wagner, we have the facility where we can grow and we can continue to offer more services. All we need are the volunteer support. But the thing is, I used to work with a group at Victory Farm who took in girls and women who had been trafficked. And I don't need to tell you what their life is like.
Sure.
Okay? I'm going to speak bluntly. They would come in such a state of heightened, I would almost say they were like squirrels. They were, yeah, they were just, they're
just skittish about everything.
Skittish about everything, no confidence, talking fast, moving fast, not stopping to think. They couldn't process things.
Right.
It was like all the adrenaline was always going. They were in survival mode every minute.
Constantly.
Yeah. When they would leave the farm, they would be calm. They would be speaking in a normal voice. They would talk to the horse, brush the horse, and they could speak out their feelings because the horse's heart and respiratory system is so huge that it will actually make our heart slow down. It will make our respiration slow down. It expands by about 4 feet. So when you're close to a horse, it has that physical effect of allowing everything to calm down, and you can be able to process and talk things out. So we are working on getting that program up and going again.
Okay, good.
Yeah, it's just, do you have something to say?
I was just wondering if you could talk about the horses themselves and how you rescue horses, because I think that's a very important aspect. I'm just going to say real quickly, my horse, personally, he has PTSD. So he was rescued, I think, from showing, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was a champion show horse.
Yeah, and so for me, it's very calming to have a horse I can relate to and just helping each other through different things. Because I've had to deal with his anxiety, he's had to deal with my anxiety. So, and that's very beneficial too as far as mental health, because you see that you're not alone,
Right.
And you're able to build a bond with these horses. And I think this is an older horse I'm going to talk about, but Flint, you said, I remember when I first led him, you're like, he hasn't trusted anyone like that in like ever. So, so it's bonds like that too that are very important. So another side of Victory Farms is horse rescue, and just providing a good place for these horses that have been abused or have been neglected, or been thrown away. So
A lot of them come from the slaughter yard.
Yeah.
And they were in the slaughter yard because of abuse, neglect.
Yeah, and you can see all the horses, or I'm assuming that the website is up to date currently with the, no?
I don't like
Well,
keeping
never
the
mind.
website. I don't like keeping the website. Look on the Facebook page.
Okay, Facebook. So and that's typical. Listen, that's typical of our
it's
guests.
Easier, yeah.
Yeah. But again, I was on the website doing some research, yesterday, knowing we were going to speak today. So again, there's the mental health piece, the horse rescue, though. So there's always I don't know what's the word. I'm not a good vocabulary person, but these additional things that kind of occur, right?
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes I appreciate Julia mentioned that, because we forget some of that other stuff that's part of the good work, really, even though it might not be directly, indirectly related to the riders, I guess. Mm-hmm. Okay, so again, I appreciate that. So I love this next question I'm going to ask, and we've obviously got a terrific example of this next question here with Julia, but can you talk about, maybe start with you, Dory, just talk about some past successes, some impacts that you've witnessed, yourself, something that you've seen, oh gosh, that is fulfilling the mission, so to speak.
Yeah.
I bet you've got lots of stories, but maybe one that you could share, and then we'll maybe, ask Julia something similar about her own experience.
Yeah, After 13 years, there are a lot of stories. Like I said, a lot of first words, many first steps. One of the ones that sticks out most in my mind is a little boy that came to us at 5 years old, and his physical therapist actually brought him to us. He had spastic cerebral palsy. He had never been able to sit up. His little body was in the shape of a C. So his legs were crossed and in his chest. His arms were down between his legs and his chest. And like I said, he had never even been able to sit up. So the therapist was wonderful in helping us learn exercises to help him learn to straighten out. So one of the first things that we did when I put him on a horse, I rode in front of him to hold him, of course, is I opened his little, as we moved, I opened his little shoulders, and he began coughing awfully. He was finally beginning to sit up and open up, and I was like, oh, my gosh, am I hurting him? And she said, no, it's the first time he's been able to breathe into his lungs, all the way into his lungs. And this little boy was just amazing. We continued to work with him for years. I would ride behind him, and the first time I did this, his legs were so tight, I could put his knees on the horse's shoulder in front of me and hold him up in a standing position. Now, this little boy was nonverbal when he came, and this blew our mind. We all started crying. The first time this happened and his legs started moving on the horse's shoulders, he started yelling, I'm walking, I'm walking. And this little boy had never known what it was to sit up.
Wow.
More or less to walk. And for him to say that,
Jeez.
and for him to know just instinctively what it would be to feel like to walk. But we continued to work with his physical therapist for about 8 years and ended up getting him up on a walker and able to sit up on his own. And then they moved away. But,
wow.
you know, it was really amazing. We were able to do a study with him that they were actually using for veterans who had been paralyzed. It's the harness that electrically stimulates the muscles to move and walk. But he had to achieve a certain amount of ability of movement to enter that program. And we did do that with the help of his therapist. And I'm talking, you know, this is why we don't do a whole lot of children at one time, because we have these times that they need special attention, and we want to be able to give it to them.
Provide a little more intensive
exactly
attention, so to speak. Is that fair?
Yeah, exactly. We had one little girl with cerebral palsy. God love her, she couldn't even hold her head up. Hers was a taxic CP. That means she had a weakness. So she couldn't hold her arms up, she couldn't use her hands, she couldn't hold her head up. But her family did sibling stem cell transfer with her. And her neurologist, her surgeon, the entire team said, this will be better for her if she can ride every day following the stem cell transfer. It will help those stem cells to integrate with her own cells and help to heal her. So that was another time where we had to make arrangements. And at this time, it was actually winter, and we had to go to a friend's indoor riding arena and put her on a friend's horse to have her ride. She was only, I think, 4 at the time this happened. So, again, she was one that we would ride behind and hold on the horse. But we would haul over there, you know, every single day for nearly 2 months, regardless of weather, put that child on and have her ride. And, yeah, these are life-changing.
Sure.
We're talking about changing someone's life.
Julie, would you add anything to that with your own experience that you've had?
Okay, well, for context, I'm just going to say there are 4 different types of CP. I have spastic ones, and I think most of the riders have spastic.
I have a few with ataxic and dystonia.
Yeah. So I have spastic as well, so I'm very tight, like she was describing. I'm very much in a, when I first came there, I was very much same in a C. I can still sit up and stuff, but my back's very tight, my legs are very tight. So I know, like, working with me, I can just feel, especially, I think when I was a little kid, I was more focused on the fact that I'm riding a horse, yay. But now I can see, like, okay, this is really helping me to stand up and to learn how to be straight and to learn how to have motor skills like, or like just walking or running, or even being able to predict, like, how much space is in between that thing and the other thing, because I work with my horse on the reins. So it has just opened up a world of mobility for me that wasn't open, the first few times before we found this place.
Julia brought up a really good point that I missed. I'm sorry, I know I'll talk a lot.
That's great.
I'm very excited to share this. A lot of these children have never had the opportunity to ride a bicycle, skateboard, scooter.
Included.
Yeah, they've never known what it is to learn speed, space, distance, turning radius, when do I start to turn, so that eventually they can drive a car. They have nothing to relate it to. And even walking down the halls at school, it's one step at a time. You don't know how to flow in traffic, to turn through the halls.
I'm like over here dodging students. So.
Yeah. So with what we do, we make our riders as independent as possible. They're not on a lead line 99% of the time, like she was saying. And we do a lot of speed, space, distance work. You're going to get to that noodle and turn left, or you're going to weave these, or you're going to stop in this box. But that is going to help them learn how to drive a car, or even like a scooter, to be more mobile, to be more independent.
Gotcha.
Again, it's life transforming.
So before we move on, I've got to ask a couple of questions here about, can you talk to us? We talked before we started recording, Julia, about some of these, this information that Dory brought about you being quite an accomplished writer. What are some of these challenges and cups you've been involved with? And with this diva horse as well?
Okay, you're talking about Junior. So he's my current. I always have a habit of calling my horse partners because I see it as a partnership. So
sure.
My current horse, his name's Junior, and yes, he is a diva. For reference, he is an American saddlebred, and for anyone who has raised or owned or even been with an American saddlebred, you know what I'm talking about when I say diva. So he very much likes to be the center of attention. And yeah, we've done a couple shows together in like 2000. I think one was in 2019. I forget when the first one was. So.
Yeah, I don't remember the first one either. It was probably 17
Yeah.
or so. I think you did a couple years before you entered the competition.
Yeah, and then I know the biggest one we did was, and we're going to do this again this year, I hope, was in Raleigh, and that one was so much fun because we had to practice for it, and we did a little maze, but that was our first time actually traveling, and I traveled with him, so that was not only so much fun, but a great learning experience for both me and him, a great bonding experience. So yeah, I've been involved in a lot of shows. Is there anyone you want me to talk about in particular?
Well, no, I just, it's okay to brag a little bit. That's all I'm saying here.
I'll brag on it.
I don't know if won't be able to see that. It really went very well, but
I'll brag on her. That's the 2022
yes,
North Carolina State Championship. She was reserved North Carolina State Champion in the UPHA Exceptional Challenge Cup. And the other one is 2019. That was here at the Dallas Park Biggerstaff Arena.
Yep.
And that is the Exceptional Challenge Cup, again with Big Junior Brown. And she was champion in her division as well.
And I do have to give credit to my horse. Me and my horse have such an amazing bond as far as he will really take care of me because as far as my CP, I get tired on the horse fast, and he can sense it. So he has ways of taking care of me and reassuring that I'm okay. In fact, one of my favorite moments happened in the Raleigh show where we were trying to finish a serpentina pattern, and one of my sides was very spastic, and it hurt, so I was in a lot of pain. So he wouldn't try or follow any of the other rules until he realized I was okay.
Oh wow!
And then
gotcha.
And then you can see this in the video more than me describing it, but you can actually see his body move to try and keep me from falling.
You can see her flinch to the side, and you see him pick her up.
Yeah.
And he was like, no, I'm not trotting. She's not ready.
Yeah. So.
And I must say, you look pretty sharp, too, on the horses in these photos. So very well done. Very well done. So, Dory, looking ahead, the next, that classic question is 5 to 10 years down the road, but it doesn't have to be 5 to 10 years down the road. But, what do you see the future for Victory Farm? Is there any big plans in the future, or is it just trying to serve, continuing doing what you're doing, or?
Well, we need to cover our arena, so we need to get some grants so that we can cover our riding arena and continue to ride despite weather. We're also trying to expand our barn so that we can take in more horses because we're adding more riders. We need more horses. A lot of our horses now are older and retired, and they will live out their life happily until they're called to the Rainbow Bridge. But we're trying to expand our facility right now, and we will be applying for grants to do that. And we're also going to have along with this expansion, we're going to have some offices put in, which is where the mental health counselors will have to be located. If you're doing any therapeutic or counseling services, they have to have a separate office to do it in for privacy situations. Sure. So we've got some build out to do. Speedway Children's Charities has provided us with a wheelchair lift. We work a lot with the Muscular Dystrophy Association. You may have, a 12-year-old boy that weighs 400 pounds due to lack of muscle tone, the steroids they're on, this type of thing. And you've still got a little boy who wants to be a cowboy. Yeah. So we actually have a cart and carriage driving program. And we just got a giant mammoth Molly mule to pull the giant carriage.
I love her. She's so pretty.
She's beautiful. But we have a wheelchair lift that was provided by Speedway Children's Charities, and so we have to cover the mounting deck area to install that as well. So we've only been in this location, it was 2 years in April. Okay. And we've had a lot of building out to do, putting in pastures. In fact, we're clearing another 5 acres right now. So if anyone has building skills, that type of thing, we need help. We need lots of volunteer help. And, again, we're looking for grants and assistance to continue to grow. All
right. Well, listeners out there, somebody out there that fits that description and feels the calling to help, please, keep that in mind. So where are you located?
We're in southern Gaston County. We're kind of down behind the Carolina Speedway, if you know where that is, off of Rufus Ratchford Road. Union, New Hope, Rufus Ratchford.
Okay, very good.
Can I just add to that? We also need people who can give us veterinary care for the horses, because sometimes it's not always easy to be able to drive a horse, so many miles down. And we've actually had a lot of health emergencies. Not recently, but
we've had 2, yeah.
Yeah, we've had like 2. So we're also kind of in need of horse health care, I guess you could say, like funds for that, because we've got how many horses do we have now? 11 horses. They all need feeding. They all have their own conditions. So being able to look after them and making sure that they have a healthy and comfortable life is important too.
Sure
is.
Absolutely.
And we do accept horse sponsors.
Okay.
You can be an equine sponsor and come and love on your horse.
Yeah, they probably don't. They don't eat much, do they?
Oh, that's one thing folks don't realize is the cost. And, just like everything else has gone up, a round bale of hay used to cost us $40 2 years ago. Now it's $110.
Yeah. Unfortunately, we are familiar with that as well. It's just
it's insane.
It is a wild. It's just a wild last couple of years.
It has been. And for us as well, it's very difficult. I still don't take a salary.
Yeah. So, wow. So, we have some questions that we'd like to ask relative to Gaston County. Before we kind of shift gears for that, is there anything I haven't asked that I should have asked? Before we finish, we'll make sure our listeners know how to find you, volunteer, how to get in touch, find more information out. We'll make sure that that's clear before we finish. But is there anything else I haven't asked that I should have asked?
You don't want to ask me an open-ended question because I'm going to talk about it.
Julia, is there anything I haven't asked?
I think we've hit on everything. I'm trying to, in my mind, just make sure we hit on everything.
All right.
Yeah, you've done a great job.
Well, thank you. So, again, we'll finish up with some more, obviously, Victory Farm-related question to finish up. But we do, because it is a podcast about Gaston County, we do like to throw in some of these Gaston County-related questions. And this is really what, the team at Victory Farm, your family, friends, this is what they really want to know about you, right? Are you prepared?
Yes.
Julia, have you seen these questions that I'm getting ready to ask you?
No.
Uh-oh. All right. Well, this will be even better. We're going to call this the Victory Speed Round of Questions. Yeah,
sure.
I come up with the most lame names for this round of questions every week. So I'll let Dory answer first, Julia, so you can at least hear the questions beforehand. Okay. So Dory, what's your favorite Tony's ice cream flavor?
Well, first off, I love the Colettas.
Oh yeah, they're great.
They've supported us with every fundraiser. They're fantastic.
I'm also a big fan of Ruth Wagner.
She's
long time.
great. Is she not
Yeah, she is
wonderful?
terrific.
God, love her.
Yes.
That woman thinks of every way to help.
Yeah, she's terrific. Yes.
Yes. Honestly, I love to go get a hot dog and follow it with a cup of butter pecan.
Wow.
Love their hot dogs.
So the lunch and the ice cream. That's what I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Julia, do you have an answer for that one?
Sadly, I'm not from around this area. I live about 30 minutes or so away. I'm actually from South Carolina.
She lives in Clover.
Well, we know what? We don't care here at Gaston's Great, so we're still going to make you answer. So what is your favorite ice cream in general?
I love a good non-dairy chocolate ice cream.
Okay.
That's so good.
Yeah, chocolate's mine too. I'd like to come up with something different, but chocolate's just my thing. Dory, are you a sun drop or cheerwine person? You have a soda. Are you familiar with sun drop or cheerwine?
Yes. I don't drink soda.
Okay, again, that is not an acceptable answer, Julia.
So if I had to pick one, it would be cheerwine.
Okay, very good. Favorite local restaurant, Dory?
We eat at Villa Roma a lot, and I also love Don Pedro.
Yeah, well, and I live on that side of the county as well, and Villa Roma. Yeah,
can be Villa Roma.
Yeah, Villa Roma's very good. Julia, are you going to actually answer a question? Do you have a favorite local restaurant?
I'll just go with what you're saying. Sure.
Well, it can be from South Carolina.
I'm trying to think of one that I went to recently.
Okay.
Panera Bread has always been like a favorite, but I know they're more of like a fast food chain.
Oh, Panera's good there. I got some good breakfast. Me and my little F3 group on Saturday mornings, we will go there often.
Yeah, I'm vegetarian as well, so anything with like a good vegetarian options is where I'm at.
Excellent. So, and you can't. Well, I was going to say you can't answer horse riding to this, but maybe I'll let it slide. Favorite outdoor activity in Gaston County, or favorite park or something?
Well, of course, we're going to say Dallas Park. Because
the
Dallas Horse Show supports us every year. They do fundraisers. We do exhibitions. They're fantastic, the Dallas Horse Show. And there's always one Memorial Weekend, so we do something patriotic. Like this year we did a patriotic drill team.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And, it was so much fun.
Yeah, Dallas Park is great.
I'm actually going to have a different answer to that question. So I like to go to for anyone who doesn't know, I have a background in audio and video editing. So I like to go to concerts around here. There's just a new place that opened up around here called the Rooster.
Yes.
So I will definitely be checking that out. But I just love seeing local bands and local concerts.
Yeah, the Rooster right down on Main Street, not far from here. Not far from here at all. All right, this is a question that I ask, and I got a feeling that I don't know if this is going to mean anything to either one of you, but I'm going to ask anyway, just because. And I don't know if you're a college sports fan or know anything about colleges around North Carolina. UNC Duke or NC State?
I went to Western Carolina, so.
Did you really?
I did. Went to Western Carolina. Business law of all things.
Catamounts.
Yes, the Catamounts.
My son graduated May of 22 from Western Carolina.
Congratulations.
Yep, he sure did. So, yeah, we've spent a lot of time in Silva and Cullowhee the last 5 or 6 years.
I love it.
It's a terrific area. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. But I also love NC State because growing up, we've always shown right by the stadium, right by Carter Finley.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And so
the fairgrounds area.
Oh, yeah. And in the old days when we were showing at Dorton Arena, we would always stay on Hillsborough Street.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you're 12 years old going to the bars after the horse show
with
all the college kids.
You just answered appropriately.
Okay, good.
Just for the record.
We love State.
Yeah, absolutely. Julia, would you have an answer to that? If you don't, I'll answer for you.
Oh, okay. You can. I did go to college, but my college was up in Raleigh, so they didn't have a team. It was a very small arts school.
Okay.
So.
Well, but if it's in Raleigh, that's where NC State is.
State.
Okay,
so
NC State then.
There you go. Well done. What is something very few people know about you? That is not an acceptable look.
Do you want me to go first?
No, I don't trust what you're going to say.
Okay.
Okay. What do few people know about me? I think everybody already knows I just love what I do. I've never been so poor and I've never been so happy.
Wow. That's very, you know what? That's very Christian. And I mean that in all sincerity, and hope you take that as a compliment. That's how I meant it.
Thanks.
Yeah.
I sold commercial insurance for 25 years, and that's when I was volunteering with other programs.
Yeah.
And oh boy, yes, I'm much happier now.
Well, good for you. Julia, how would you answer that?
Like I said, something that a lot of people may not know about me is I have a lot of background in video editing and also audio work, but I really, really love, and this is something that not a lot of people know about me, but I really love interfaith work. So, so I go to churches, especially if I can, traveling around more, if traveling seems to open up more. My goal this year is to really go to more events with more churches. I work with a church in California. They do interfaith work, and that kind of work is just really important to me as well. And I think as I start to find my own congregation, I'll definitely pursue something in that area.
All right. Well, very good. That's a great answer. Thank you for sharing that.
Extremely talented.
Dory, what about, is there a recent book or blog or article or podcast or something that, you've read over the years, or it doesn't have to be recent? I use that word. I don't really care if it's recent or not, but anything that you could share with our listeners?
I don't have a whole lot of time for that, and I just had to finish 28 hours of continuing education for all my certifications. So I would say continuing to learn more, and I'm getting ready to go to school again for this mental health counseling. So I just love what I do. So continuing to learn and.
Well, good for you. I mean, that'll tie in a little bit. I always finish up with a little quote of thought for each podcast, and what you just said will tie in very, very nicely with that. Julia, how would you answer that? Anything that you could share with our listeners?
For me, especially this year, I've been trying to get closer to my friends, and I think just having people in your life that inspire you. And
oh wow, yeah.
In college, I had a wonderful group of mentors and teachers who really inspired me to do what I do.
Yeah.
And especially, I was the only kid with a disability in the school.
Oh,
so
wow.
Fighting against every single AA, thing that you can ever think of, and trying to do audio work, they really encouraged me. And one thing I learned is keep those people in your life, 'cause it'll give you strength even for when times get hard.
Amen.
Maybe we should stop the podcast after that one.
No,
Very well said.
She's
Julia.
right. We couldn't exist without our volunteers,
Yeah.
and we have the most amazing volunteer team. My goodness, we couldn't do
And
anything.
everyone helps out, and
Parents and everything. Yeah. It's amazing.
and
Well,
Kelly. Shout out to Kelly.
I appreciate you kind of indulging us on those Gaston County related questions. So we're going to a couple more questions, and we'll get this episode finished up. And I like this question because, remember, this is a podcast focused on Gaston County in general and all the good things that are happening around us. And sometimes, we've got some really well-kept secrets, around as well. But, Dory, besides Victory Farm, why would you say Gaston County is such a great place?
Well, I just said it. It's the people.
You did, yeah.
It's amazing, the support that we have, and the people that just come and they give their sweat, they give their love, they give their passion. We're an all-volunteer program. Not one person has a salary. And yet, look at
it's still happening.
Being achieved. Yes.
Yeah.
It's the people.
Would you Julie, would that be your same kind of take on that question, or would you have something different to add there?
Yes, because especially with things opening up in the town, I did briefly mention the Rooster before, but just to see all kinds of people coming together for artists in this area, especially for me living kind of close but still being a newer artist, seeing that is yes, thank you for giving us this place to express ourselves, to share music or art or whatever it might be. So yeah, people.
Okay.
100%.
Very good. All right, so this is our last question, and I know Naomi probably looks at me every time I say this because I say it every episode. This is my favorite question. And Dory, I'll have to maybe modify it a little bit for Julia because I don't know how many years ago this has been, but knowing what you know now, Dory, what advice would you give your 20-year-old self?
Listen to God sooner. Quit fighting it, woman. Just get on with it. Yeah, it's what you got to do to be happy.
Yeah, I don't like that.
You don't like that?
No, I'm being sarcastic, right? Because, I mean, I have no doubt. Like I said at the beginning, God is, or maybe before we were, maybe before we were recording, but well, it was after you told your story about starting Victory Farm. Yeah, that I said, I'm sure God has talked to me more than once when I didn't want to listen, right?
Right.
And
right.
I ignored it when I was younger, for sure.
I thought I needed to have the money. I thought I needed to have some status. None of that makes you happy.
Yeah, that's interesting and true. Julia, how would you answer that? Because it maybe might be better to word it a few years ago as opposed to when you were 20, when you were younger, maybe. What advice would you give?
Don't move to college in 2020. Just don't do it at all.
That's interesting. He goes, you're probably close to the same age as my middle daughter, and her second semester at NC State is when COVID hit, and it just, that experience just it was not good.
For reference, my college, as I said briefly, was in Raleigh, and I moved there in like September, and then the whole COVID thing happened, and we were the only college open for a long time.
Yeah.
And then everything shut down, so I wasn't able to like get a job, or I actually had to leave school pretty soon because of that. But just wait until everything opens up, and then maybe.
That's a good point. Yeah, you got to look at the circus, and there's some things that are just out of our control too, right?
Yeah, true.
And you got to figure
I
out how to.
don't think anyone. I remember I planned for like everything. I remember putting the whole college plan together, but I didn't plan for a worldwide pandemic. Don't think anyone did.
Yeah. Oh no. I mean, it was. Matter of fact, we try to even not say that word around here anymore, but because it was such a strange, it's a strange time, and for organizations like yourself, I can't imagine how that impacted you guys.
It's very strange going to, again, this was a very small school, and we had dorm rooms I was on campus. So we had definitely strict rules about what you could and could not do, how your hands could wash and stuff. It's very weird to go through that in a school.
Yeah, I bet. Well, listen, I appreciate that. And so, listen, this has been really good, and I appreciate the work that you guys are doing. So, again, the main point is to bring awareness to maybe to some listeners who might not be familiar with the organization. So where can listeners go to learn more, volunteer? I mean, events coming up, other things you're involved with, please share anything and everything.
Well,
Facebook.
Definitely
Facebook.
Our Facebook page is the most active and current place to find any information. And you can always message us on Facebook. And for reference, our Facebook name, I did this back when I didn't know much about stuff like that, is Victory Farm Inc. It's INC, like incorporated, Victory Farm INC. Our website is victoryrides.org. And on there we also have a contact us where people can write in.
Okay.
And
if you like Instagram, we have an Instagram too that I think is under the same name as.
No, I don't keep Instagram up. Are you keeping it up?
It's on there. Victory Farm Stall Inc. on Instagram. So yeah.
Okay. Well, I didn't know anything
it's
about
that. It's on there. So
how about you mentioned this already? Is the greatest current need you have? Is it volunteers? Is that what?
It's volunteers and grants and donors and work. We've got a lot of work to do. We've got a new pasture to put in and fences to build and all that kind of stuff. And we have church groups come that are like from age 8 all the way up to adult groups, that come in. United Rentals just came and helped us a couple weeks ago. So it's really nice that we have so much support from the community, but we need a lot more of that. We got a lot of stuff to do.
All right, very good. So before we wrap this up, any final words, any last words of wisdom before we finish this episode up?
Thank you.
Well, you're welcome.
Thank you.
We appreciate that. Julia, anything you'd like to add before we finish this up?
Thank you for the time and exposure and the chance to do this.
Oh, absolutely.
Yes.
Well, listen, I've been involved in community 20, 25 years, different organizations. I've seen so many good things happening around our county, and I do appreciate, specifically the work that you are doing and it's obvious the passion you have for it, and that's coming across in the conversation. So, again, I'm very appreciative and grateful for our community is a better place because you guys are here and what you guys are doing. So like normal, I'm going to finish up with my own book or podcast recommendation, and I'm going old school on a book here by a gentleman named Russell Conwell, and it's called Acres of Diamonds. And if you're not familiar with it, I would just encourage you to look it up. And it's kind of a inspirational personal development / business, but I thought it kind of tied in with the work that's happening at Victory Farm as well. And my thought is really going to tie into what Dory mentioned earlier, and it comes from Zig Ziglar. And I'm a big learner. I'm a big, I was fortunate enough to go to NC State and got out of NC State and thought I had learned all I needed to learn, but I have learned more the last 15 or 20 years than the previous, 30 years combined, by reading, studying, listening to podcasts, interacting with people like Dory and Julia. I mean, I've just learned so much more since then. But Zig Ziglar said, if you're not willing to learn, no one can help you. If you are determined to learn, no one can stop you. So I just think being a lifelong learner is just so important. And if you look around, I think at the most successful people, however you define success, you'll find that they are probably constantly learning and trying to get better, which is kind of what I heard from our two guests today, which is kind of part of their mission. So to our listeners out there, thanks so much for taking the time to listen to today's episode. Please continue to spread the word if you can about the podcast. And please don't hesitate to contact us here at our email address, which is podcast@gastonsgreat.com. We're always looking for suggestions for future podcast topics and guests. You can find the podcast and subscribe at our website, which is gastonsgreat.com, or anywhere you listen to podcasts. And please follow us on all our social media platforms and continue to share the podcast if you can. And as always, Naomi reminds me that giving us a good 5-star rating on the podcast helps us get noticed. Thanks again to Dory and Julia for being our guests today. Gaston's Great is produced and brought to you by Naomi Hunt and Amy Anderson from GSM Services. I'm your host, Stephen Long. Thanks again for hanging out with us, and please keep coming back to hear more reasons why Gaston's great.